Hey everyone, how's it going? By popular demand, and by popular demand I mean like one or two people, um, I am doing a video on how to arsenal good and do other things good too. It's impossible to talk about the proper arsenal cards without also talking about what your game plan should be, how your game plan should play out, right? Because obviously, when we look to Arsenal card, we look to set up for future turn and really make sure that we're able to fully execute our game plan. So, in the course of this video, I'm going to talk about not just arsenaling, but also how we want to play things, and these cards will be in no particular order except the order in which I downloaded the images. So it's going to be a little bit haphazard. I'm not going to do a scale of 1 to 10 because it's good. I'll give a value of like 9.725 for something and just be wildly obtuse. I'm going to tell you when you could arsenal things, when you should arsenal things, and which things really just shouldn't be in your arsenal. Which are your high value targets, which are your highest value targets, etc. So to start, we're going to start with Beast Within. Once this loads... Hello? Where's my Beast Within? Will you give me my Beast Within, please? Oh, okay. There we go, cool. Alright, yes, give me my Beast Within. Cool. So we're going to start with Beast Within. Beast Within is a card that you don't often want to arsenal. There are niche instances where, like, I had an Azalea turn 0 dominate with Seek and Destroy. And I just so happened to have a Beast Within available in hand, and I was able to sort of sculpt my hand and sculpt my turn in a way that I could keep the Beast Within in my hand and still have a good hand and still have a good turn. And then I moved to the end of my turn, and I went, oh, look! Seek and Destroy triggers. Hey, I have a Beast Within. And I traded for, at this point, Art of War was legal. Traded it for actually a Slithering Shadowpede, which was an incredible arsenal. But Beast Within, you really don't look to arsenal it unless like you're really trying to bait CNC or Seek and Destroy. There are definitely games against like Guardian or other decks that will throw CNC where like turn 0, all arsenal of Beast Within on the hope that they send a CNC, but it's one of those things where you have to have the soul read that they're going to CNC you, because then you can just like give a 3 block to just kind of value block, trigger Beast Within, and effectively get back the card that you blocked with for the cost of baiting out their CNC and forcing them to play in a way which incentivizes CNC. Other than that, don't put Beast Within in your arsenal. You're kind of asking for trouble. So the next card we're going to talk about is Swing Big. Swing Big is a perfectly usable arsenal, but more in the early game. You don't want to arsenal this in a later game, in later parts of the game, because as you make your way to getting cards into Banish with Blood Debt, you want to look to have a Banisher in your arsenal as opposed to Swing Big. However, if it ends up that this is the only card in your hand, you're perfectly happy. Then you're perfectly happy with arsenaling this, but don't look to arsenal Swing Big over something like a Banisher. Pretty much the only non-Banisher you're going to look to have in your arsenal, and this is a spoiler for what's about to happen, the only non-Banisher you're going to look to have in your arsenal outside of Go Again is like Blood Rush. And even that itself is Go Again. But looking at an attack that you want to put in your arsenal that does not have does not have Blood Dead, does not banish, is Wild Ride. Wild Ride is a great arsenal target, especially when you are trying to maintain tempo. I would not arsenal Wild Ride over like Dread Screamer if my graveyard was healthy. If I have a healthy graveyard and I have the option of like playing a Wild Ride and arsenaling a Screamer, or like arsenaling Wild Ride playing the Screamer, I'm going to try to arsenal the Screamer over the Wild Rider. Let's say maybe we get hit with Coronet Peak and I have to decide pitching the Wild Rider, pitching the Screamer. Right, I would be happier with a Screamer in Arsenal over the Wild Ride, but both of them give us that second AP, and that's what we're looking for, right? When we want to maintain pressure, we are looking to prioritize two different Arsenal targets. We want to prioritize, how do you spell prioritize? Prioritize Banishers and things that give us bonus AP. Wild Ride gives us bonus AP. Certainly, it is a very prime arsenal target. And when you're looking at a hand that has both Wild Ride and, let's say, Blood Rush. So let's say you draw up your turn 0, and your turn 0 is like Wild Ride, Blood Rush Bellows, two random blues, right? And you're going, I don't know which card to arsenal. You arsenal the Wild Ride for a couple reasons. One, it guarantees that you have an attack off Blood Rush Bellows, right? So let's say you draw up your hand, or you have a red off Blood Rush Bellows, right? So let's say you pitch this to Claw, and then you draw up with Blood Rush Bellows your other blue, and then like 2 random cards, and you have a Wild Ride in Arsenal. Now you pitch this blue, right? You pitch the blue to play Blood Rush, discard one of these 2, and maybe you draw like 2 utility blues. And maybe this is a Blood Debt card, right? Or maybe you blocked with this card. So now you have 2 utility blues, and you can still go claw into Wild Ride from Arsenal. On top of that, Wild Ride also doesn't block. And worst comes to worst, you will have to block. If you like need to block to preserve something, Wild Ride doesn't do that where you can with Blood Rush. Plus, outside of new, decks don't really attack your hand. So if, for some reason, you need to give up your arsenal, I would rather give up a Wild Ride and put a 6 in my graveyard than give up one of the strongest cards in the deck, which is Blood Rush. So for a number of reasons, you want to put that Wild Ride in your arsenal over Blood Rush. Now, don't get me wrong, it's always nice to have a Blood Rush in arsenal, waiting for that good Blood Rush hand. I'm not saying Blood Rush is a bad arsenal, but certainly Wild Ride is one of my highest priority arsenal targets. Looking at a less high priority arsenal target, Ghostly Visit. I can think of few instances where you would have a Ghostly Visit in your hand and not play it out, but it's an okay arsenal target. It's not the best in the world, but certainly it baits disruption, right? So let's say you're playing against a deck with CNC, you're playing against Assassin, and they send a Leave No Witnesses at you. You value block at that point, and they send a CNC, right? You value block, but you're happy for Ghostly Visit to go into your graveyard or directly to banish, right? If you can get that, if you can get them to like, really, really commit to something which targets your arsenal, and they hit a Ghostly Visit, you're not happy. You're very happy. You're not upset. However, your goal should be to block with it or play it, and certainly arsenaling Ghostly to then block with 2 cards, and then pitch a blue to send Dread Screamer into Ghostly. Great turn. Super happy with that turn. Or like Wild Ride into Ghostly, right? Sending that 3-card 10. That's where we definitely want to be. Ghostly is probably the best of your 1-card sort of banish or follow-ups that doesn't banish. itself. So pretty much I'm excluding Diabolic off. Not Diabolic, Boneyard Marauder. Diabolic Offering here, I'm going to loop this in with Graveling Growl. This is a trap. I have fallen for the trap a number of times, but this is a trap. You arsenal Diabolic Offering, and you're like, oh yeah, this is going to be great because I'm going to draw one of my 6 Dread Screamers, or, one of my Dread Screamers, something like that. And maybe I'll get an agility and I'll be able to play it out. But what ends up happening more often than not, and I have lost a game because I have arsenaled a Diabolic Offering, and actually I'm just going to put this right here because this is effectively the same exact trap. We're going to pull this over here. These are both traps. They are here to trap you and to make you feel the big sad. They are traps. They do not come out of arsenal as quickly as you like. You can very easily have one sit there for like 5 or 6 turns. I would rather IP myself than play this, than arsenal this. That's not how you write a P. There we go. I would 100% rather IP over arsenal, just because it is like, oh, it is such a trap. And don't get me wrong, right? In the games where you arsenal it and the next turn you draw a Dread Screamer, you feel like, or like you have an agility. You know what? I take that back. If you have an agility, if you know that you have an agility going into your next turn, I would arsenal this. But outside of that, like, it's just such a trap. Only arsenal if you have an agility. If you don't have an agility, if you cannot guarantee that you will have a second AP to be able to get these out of your arsenal after a banisher, do not arsenal it. Because it will sit there for 5 or 6 turns. It will stink up your arsenal. And then you're going to cry on Twitter about how Levia needs to be buffed. She does need a small buff, but that's not why. The next one, this next card, Send Packing, falls under the falls in the category of doesn't have Blood Debt, which makes it okay. It's better than Graveling Growl and Diabolic Offering, but that's obviously not a very high bar. If you have nothing left, arsenal it anyway. Certainly it's not a bad flip play, but outside of that, I'm not super stoked. And like, especially if you can set up your flip turn to be like trigger Apex Bonebreaker, so now you're sending Send Packing in for 7, you're presenting that disruption with that breakpoint. That's incredible. But if I had a choice of arsenaling Send Packing over like Swing Big, I would arsenal Swing Big for a flip play. I would. It is low on my arsenal targets, but it is not the lowest. Next one I have downloaded is Shadow of Blasphemous. I really like Shadow of Blasphemous. Worst comes to worst, this is a pseudo banisher. It's not a full banisher, just because obviously we do have those misses off the top of the deck, but if you arsenal it, it gets you deeper into your deck. It gets you more cards in your graveyard, and again, it falls into the 2 things that we prioritize, which are banishers and things that give us bonus AP. Shadow of Blasphemous is a D's plus arsenal. Not the greatest arsenal in the world. Obviously, I would arsenal like a Wild Ride over Shadow of Blasphemous. But definitely a card that's very easy to play, and certainly a card that you don't want to keep in your hand just because it has that pearl, The next card I'm going to talk about is Agile windup. I'm going to be completely honest with you. Why is this in your hand? Why Why not just discard it? I see no reason to arsenal this. Like, even turn 0. Like, turn 0, you discard it. There's zero reason. There's zero reason to arsenal this unless you have the absolute soul read, again, that your opponent's going to send some arsenal disruption, and you just want to stick a card in there to bait that arsenal disruption that you don't really care about. But ultimately, no, please don't arsenal this card. Just give yourself the agility and move on with your life. Deep-Rooted Evil is another one of those pretty okay banishers. Obviously not incredible, but not banisher. Okay, arsenal. You just like Shadow of Lazarus, just like Wild Ride, you don't want you want to avoid keeping it in hand if you can, because it does not have that it does not have a block value. So if arsenaling it is the way to get it out of your hand, then arsenal it. And again, just like with Ghostly Visit, if you have that soul read that your opponent's gonna threaten your arsenal, and especially if it's a banish, or like in the Brute Mirror, for instance, let's say you're on a list that has Deep-Rooted Evil main board and doesn't ever take it out, like you arsenal that, they send packing it, you go, cool, sweet, thanks, you just helped me. But ultimately it's a little clunky just because it means you have to keep that extra blue in your hand for the next turn. Come here. Next one, Mark of the Beast. Now, Mark of the Beast, while it doesn't give us a second AP, it is an easy-to-play banisher. And that... Whoa, what was that? That automatically makes it a good arsenal target. Where are we? All of your easy-to-play banishers, which are pretty much all of your banishers, like Shadow of Blazonfet is the hardest to play banisher, and even then that's more luck of the draw than anything else. Good arsenal target. Would I arsenal it over... Actually, I'm going to do this because they both kind of occupy the same space. Where is my Hungering Slaughter Beast? There it is. Also, when it comes to cards that come in multiple colors, they all mostly serve the same function, right? So we talked about yellow Agile Windup and yellow Graveling Growl. They serve the same. The reds and the yellows serve the same function. Blue Agile Windup, I swear to God, if you arsenal Blue Agile Windup, I'm gonna find you and I'm going to eat your copies of Blue Agile Windup. But Blue Agile Windup, Blue Graveling Growl, they're Red Agile Windup, Red Graveling Growl. They serve the same purpose. They do the exact same thing, regardless of whether they are red or yellow. So for both of these, they're easy to play banishers. They're both good arsenal targets. And now, let's say you have both of them in hand. Well, which do I arsenal? If you have a bad graveyard or few cards, I guess like a bad graveyard in terms of you either have way too many misses or you have too few cards, arsenal the Mark of the Beast. Mark of the Beast is simply a get out of jail free card. You get to attack with it, it banishes, you don't have to worry about anything. If you have an okay graveyard, or you want to build even more blood debt, right? Obviously, Hungering Slaughter Beast gets 3 cards, which can give you 2 to 3 blood debt, as opposed to Mark of the Beast's single blood debt. You want Hungering Slaughter Beast in your arsenal over Mark of the Beast, and there have been plenty of games where I have had to choose between putting a Mark of the Beast or putting a Hungry Slaughter Beast in my arsenal. Another thing to keep in mind is, do you want to block with either of them? Is it more important to block with Hungering Slaughter Beast, or do you not care about having Mark of the Beast just banish itself, right? So, again, if you have that bad graveyard, if you have too few cards in your graveyard, you don't want to block with this, because this doesn't build your graveyard. You want to block with this because this builds your graveyard. So again, they serve very, very much the same purpose, but in two different ways. Oh, I skipped a row. Whatever. The next card I'm going to talk about is Wrecker Romp, and I'm going to say don't arsenal this. This falls in the category of arsenal it if you have the Soul Read. Arsenal only in cases of Yomi. Right, that Soul Read that your opponent's gonna send Arsenal Disruption, and you want to bait something that you don't really care about losing. Which is to say, don't arsenal this ever, please, for the love of God. Like, I would rather IP than arsenal that. Pulping. Pulping is a very good arsenal. This is right up there with Wild Ride, and I probably should have put it next to Wild Ride. But it is wonderful. It's a way to obviously fill your graveyard. It's a way to get that second AP. That's not an R. It's a way to push damage. I mean, it does so many things. Turns on claws. Would I arsenal this over Wild Ride? That's a very good question. And it depends entirely on the state of the game. If you, let's say you somehow have a hand of I have Ophidia, Pulping, Wild Ride, I would arsenal the Wild Ride because I can use the I have Ophidia to guarantee that the Wild Ride gains go again. If you are in a position where you want to have the go again pretty much unconditionally, or force your opponent to give you 2 cards, arsenal the Pulping. If you think your opponent's going to threaten your Pulping and your choice is threaten your arsenal, or your choice is Pulping or Wild Ride, I would put the Pulping in there, because if your opponent's threatening arsenal, they are also most likely going to have an extra card to block with. Like maybe a D-React, they're more of a defensive deck, although I don't know why you have Pulping in that case. Maybe you always arsenal Pulping over Wild Ride. That's a good point. Thanks for making that point. Arsenal Pulping over Wild Ride. It's almost always the better call, especially if you have to choose between 2 no blocks. Hungering Demigon is okay. I'm not quaking in my boots about it. It's fine. I would rather just block. I don't know why I can't draw an R on this thing. I would rather just block, just have blocked with it. Or just attacked with it and blocked and arsenaled a different card. Like, even if it means I have to play like off curve and inefficiently, the on hit, like this, where is it? Right here. This right here, when this hits a hero, banish a card from their soul. I did such a poor job of circling that. That's not even going to do anything. Cool. Great. This is so impactful that it doesn't matter that you're playing inefficiently, just because this is an on-hit is worth like 4 or 5 damage minimum, like bonus damage minimum, to the light heroes. So it just has so much more value that there's almost no reason to ever not just attack with it anyway, if you're running it. Smashback is, again, an incredible arsenal target. I'm actually going to give it the incredible, if I can spell incredible. It's an incredible arsenal target for 2 reasons. One, it always comes out. Whenever you want it gone, boom, it's gone. Get it out of there. But 2, you're not like super upset if it's threatened. Obviously you want to keep it, but you know, if it goes away, and it's not the end of the world. So if you end up with the Smashback in hand, arsenal it. It's great. +1 graveyard, +1 AP. That's not how we write it. +1 AP on the next turn. It does everything you want it to do, and can never clog up your arsenal unless you get like Warmongers. But who's gonna play Warmongers on a Levia? So the next card, Writhing Beast Hulk. It's good. It is again a banisher, and the two things that we want to get into our arsenal are banishers or extra AP. Would I arsenal this over something like a Wild Ride? Probably not. I would probably still look to arsenal the Wild Ride, just because I want to get that no block out of my hand, and if it ends up that I don't really have a banisher, I can easily just block 6, send Writhing Beast Hulk as my only banisher for the turn, and move on with my life. No reason to really roll the dice on, I hope that I send a Wild Ride and magically, keep a blue with Writhing and Wild Ride, and like now you're hoping you hit a blind beast within. Like, that doesn't work, right? Send it, but certainly Writhing Beast Hulk, if you end up just arsenaling this, you always want to have banishers in arsenal. It's just your get out of jail free card, right? Your hand is a stinker. All you can do is like keep a yellow in hand. Boom, turn off Blood Debt. Easy enough. Plus this one also threatens some extra damage due to the evasion. The next one, Boneyard is one of the best arsenals in the deck. It doesn't have a second AP, but there is no hand where you have to keep more than one card to play it, right? Just worst comes to worst, you arsenal a Boneyard, you know for a fact that if you are allowed to keep a single card in your hand, you are turning off Blood Debt. On top of that, it pairs incredibly well with any of your 2-cost go-agains, whether it's your Dread Screamer, whether it's your Wild Ride, whether it's your Pulping. All of them work so incredibly well with Boneyard Marauder, and especially if you have a Pulping or a Wild Ride, you know that you guaranteed have that arsenal. I honestly, depending on the game state, I would probably arsenal a Boneyard over a Wild Ride. No, that's a lie. I would still arsenal the Wild Ride just because I would rather, if you're in a position where you need to block with Boneyard and it's your only banisher, you're losing the game kind of anyway, and I would rather be able to block with the Boneyard and preserve that 3 life, possibly. Actually. Arsenal the Boneyard if you think you need to block out. If you think you need to block out, arsenal the Boneyard. Because you can block 9. The Wild Ride's not going to block, but that's fine. You didn't want to block anyway. You wanted to send the Boneyard. If you don't think you're going to have to block out, arsenal the Wild Ride. But Boneyard as your one card, as just a 1-card banisher that you can easily just keep literally any card for, unless you're playing Dimensional Vortex, but at that point stop cooking. Please get out of the kitchen. You don't know how to cook. Next card is Deadwood Rumbler. Deadwood Rumbler is a card that I'm lukewarm on. It's mid. It does what you want. It is technically a banisher, but having to keep a whole blue just to send a Deadwood Rumbler, I don't know. I don't like it. I like Shadow of Plasmafet more just because it has so much higher upside than Deadwood Rumbler does. Deadwood Rumbler's upside is a lot lower than Shadow of Plasmafet's, just because Deadwood Rumbler you have to choose from the cards in your graveyard, and like obviously if you hit a 6, you can then immediately banish that 6, but certainly very early game when there's like no cards in graveyard, if you hit a 6, you have to banish that 6. and now you have a card with Blood Debt in Banish when you may not want to have it in Banish, right? Let's say, you Arsenal, and then your opponent just, like, takes a bunch of non-attack action turns, and they pass. Like, if you send Shadow of Plasma Fet, you can get Deep Rooted Evil in Banish, whereas if you send Deadwood Rumbler, you can't. It's fine. I don't like having to keep a whole blue for it, as opposed to Shadow of Plasma Fet, where you only need to keep a yellow. Dread Screamer in all colors is premier Arsenal target. It's both of the things you want your Arsenals to do. It turns off Blood Debt, and it gives you that extra AP. Plus, obviously, it turns on your Gravelings, it turns on your Diabolics. There is... I think that this is better than Blood Rush as an Arsenal target. Certainly, if I have the choice of arsenaling a go-again attack over a Blood Rush, I'm going to arsenal the go-again attack. Don't get me wrong, Blood Rush is great. We're always happy to have a Blood Rush chilling in Arsenal. But if I have the choice, I will almost always go for the go-again attack. There is no comfier feeling that there is no comfier feeling than having a Dread Screamer parked in Arsenal. The only card that comes close is Boneyard, and then when we get to it, Endless Maw. Just because even if you have to waste in quotes your dread on banishing just to not die, you're still staying alive, and you're still threatening that damage. And so Dread Screamer is just an incredible card in both red and blue. And if you run yellows, in yellow too. But definitely the best, if not one of the best, if not the best Arsenal in the entire deck. The next one is up there. Unworldly Bellow is probably my favorite blue tech card that we play. It does almost everything that Dread does. The difference between Unworldly Bellow and Dread Screamer is that it threatens 2 to 4 less damage. There's a lot of times where that 2 to 4 less damage matters, but there's a lot of games where you're playing against a very slow and grindy deck, where you maybe need to take a few turns to trade a little bit of value, and the ability to... Don't ask me what I was writing, I have no idea. The ability to keep a hand that normally wouldn't turn off Blood Debt, because you have an Unworldly in Arsenal, and just go pitch a yellow. Let's say you have 2 Graveling Growl, you're left with 2 Graveling Growls in hand. You can pitch 1 Graveling Growl to Unworldly Graveling Growl, and that's it's a 3-card 8. It's not impressive, but you turned what were 2 dead cards into 8 damage, and then that an extra 6. Plus, Unworldly is really, really good if you need to get your banish. Let's say you have a Boneyard, but you have 6 misses in your grip. You have 6 cards, half of which are misses. The odds are good that you hit, but having the Unworldly into Boneyard, it full on guarantees that you banish a 6. So Unworldly is an incredibly good card. Love to have it in my arsenal. Always happy when a list includes Unworldly Bellow. Plus, of course, it pairs incredibly well with Wild Ride or Swing Big or something like that. Staying in our blue base, Doomsday is a surprisingly good arsenal target. It's not incredible, but it is good. Again, this one falls in the category of cards that you can use to bait Arsenal disruption, right? Let's say you have 6 or more cards with Blood Debt and Banish, and your opponent, you can play the Doomsday and not have any AP, or you can play the Doomsday without any AP, so you can't attack Blasmafet, so now your opponent gets to actually threaten Blasmafet, or you can give your opponent the idea that you have a card you want to protect in Arsenal, and then they threaten it, and then you just Doomsday in response, and now they sculpted their turn around threatening Arsenal, so they probably took a little bit of extra damage. And instead of meaningfully disrupting you, they are now facing down an extra 6 damage. Most of the time, I'm pitching it or playing it over arsenaling it, just because usually you can find a second AP to that's not how you spell pitching. Usually you can find that second AP to get the attack in with Blasmo, but as far as Arsenal cards that can come out whenever you want them to leave, it's right up there with that smashback, right? The ability to, you want it gone as long as you have 6 or more cards with Blood Debt, it's gone. Goodbye. Please note, if you are going consumed and you do not have 6 cards with Blood Debt in Banish, for the love of God, don't Arsenal this. Like, if you have 5 cards with Blood Debt and Banish, sure, that's fine. If you have 4 cards with Blood Debt and Banish, and you are not guaranteed to hit 2 cards before you play a Blood Debt attack, please don't Arsenal this, because it could get stuck there permanently, and really just clunk everything up. But otherwise, it's a really good card. Mutated Mass probably falls in the Diabolic Offering category. It's not fully a trap, just because you can get it out for 2 damage, but it is definitely not as reliable as Ghostly. So that's not how you spell reliable. Not as reliable as Ghostly. Not as bad as Diabolic or Graveling. I would still rather have played or pitched it, just so I can call it to the grave. But again, if you have that Soul Read, there's a lot of cards actually that you can play, that you can arsenal if you have the Soul Read, and you're like, yeah, you're gonna threaten my arsenal, and I'm gonna put something there that I either want in my graveyard or want in Banish. Not the worst arsenal target, but I've certainly seen better. Guardian of the Shadow Realm, pretty good arsenal target, not gonna lie. Obviously, is a D-React. That's wow. Is a D-React, and that's what matters a lot of the time. It's playing from Arsenal is, let's do it this way. We're going to do hand is worse than Arsenal is worse than. That's not what I want. Come here. Thank you. Hand, Arsenal, Banish. Playing from hand is awful. You always feel bad. Playing from Arsenal is fine. It is nice to be able to play it from Arsenal. Obviously, playing it from Banish is incredible, right? Turning 1 card in your hand into 6 block is so incredible. But even just like being able to blank a big turn, and especially if you're against like another brute and they send Pulping, and like your turn is block with a card from hand plus Guardian the Shadow Realm into like a Banisher, right? Into a one into like a. I was gonna say 1 card to pay for, but all of our Banishers cost 1 card to pay for. Like, that's really good. That is a really high tempo play that you can get off. There are very few instances where arsenaling this will bite you. So it's pretty good. The next card, Soul Harvest, is not good. The only time you arsenal this is if you're doing pitch stack Blasmo, and you know that you can not only get to this, but have all of the cards in graveyard to go tear limb into Soul Harvest for 19 dominate. It's the only time you arsenal this, and of course if you have the Soul Read. But even then, I would rather just pitch it or block with it. Definitely do not arsenal this. Howl from Beyond is another one of those weird cards where you really have to ask yourself, like, just how did this get to Arsenal? Why did I neither play it or block with it? Certainly, it's not the worst. You know, it's better than many other cards, just because, you know, if you draw like a Boneyard Marauder, boom, pitch a blue, Howl from Beyond into Boneyard Marauder. Like, is it as good as playing Howl from Banish into Boneyard Marauder? No, it's not. But there are worse cards. But really, you gotta ask yourself, how did this get here? Why did it get here? Why did we not block with it or play it in the previous turn cycle for just honestly completely free value? Tear Limb, right up there. Great arsenal target. It is effectively a blue Wild Ride. Except if you miss, your turn doesn't immediately end. Love putting it in my arsenal. I would put Blood Rush in my arsenal over Tear Limb, just because Tear Limb is a blue, and worst comes to worst, you can pitch, like, if your hand is a bad Blood Rush hand, you can still Tear Limb that hand. Whereas if your hand is a bad Blood Rush hand and you have Blood Rush in hand, now you're pitching your Blood Rush to play Tear Limb, but it's already, like, by the way, bad Blood Rush hand would be like, you have two non-block, you have two non-6s, right? So let's say, you know, you draw a hand and it's Tear Limb, Barraging, and then 2 6s, and you have Blood Rush in arsenal. This hand sends Tear Limb, right? You pitch the Barraging, send Tear Limb, draw a random card, probably hit a 6, and then, you know, send whatever you have left. Really, really good card, really strong card. Great arsenal target. I would like I said, I would arsenal Blood Rush over Tear Limb. The next card is actually the only card which I like. You know, remember when I said that there were no cards that were better than Dread Screamer? For some reason, I forgot about Shadow Realm Horror. It is the best arsenal target in the deck. Arsenal this card over quite literally any other card in the deck. No ifs, ands, or buts. It's the best arsenal target. It gives you your go again. It's your banisher. You know, it enables 20 damage turns. We've all done the 20 damage Shadow Realm Horror turn. I don't think I need to say anymore on Shadow Realm. Call the Grave. I probably should have put this next to Smashback. It is a great arsenal target. If you want to spook your opponent, right, kind of play mind games with them, or let's say, you know, you have a really awkward graveyard on one turn and you don't want to add the extra miss of Call to the Grave, you can arsenal this, because guess what? It comes out whenever you want. Why is it not drawing this? Oh, comes out whenever. If your opponent threatens it, there are plenty of hands where you just say, nope, I'm not blocking. You can take my Call to the Grave. I'll have other things that I can do. But it is a very, very good arsenal target. Not my favorite, but certainly very good. Talked about it a bunch. Here's the Blood Rush. Blood Rush is good. I mean, it's one of the best Arsenal targets. Would I Arsenal a... would I Arsenal it over... over 6 go again? No, I wouldn't. But I would Arsenal it over most other I would genuinely Arsenal it over most other cards in the deck. Actually, I take that back. Don't Arsenal it over... come back. Where are we? We're here. Cool. Don't Arsenal it over just go again. If you have if your choice is Smashback and Blood Rush, or Call the Grave and Blood Rush, Barraging and Blood Rush, Arsenal the other non-attack. And that's not because Blood Rush is weak, but that's because you don't want to... You run the risk of drawing an extra non-attack, so now you have 2 non-attacks in your hand, and, now it gets super awkward. Although I guess you can just play... Yeah, never mind. I take it back. Arsenal the Blood Rush, because most of your other non-attacks, you can just play the non-attacks, get them out of your hand if you absolutely need to. And certainly a card like Barraging Beatdown, great card. Reckless Swing is a D-react, but it is... This one requires a lot more... requires a lot more of a read. Certainly, if you think... if your opponent is in reckless range, Arsenal it, and then just look him in the eyes and ask him, are you feeling lucky? But outside of that, like turn 0, I wouldn't Arsenal a Reckless. I would rather pitch it away, wait for later on into the game where your opponent's life total is lower, to Arsenal the Reckless. Alright. Barraging Beatdown. Another incredible Arsenal target. The ability to just get it out whenever you want, right? Just leaves whenever you want it to. Plus, it provides disruption is just incredible. Now, let's say you have a hand of Unworldly plus Barraging. Which one do you Arsenal? Well, okay. Is your opponent going to threaten your Arsenal? If you think your opponent's going to threaten your Arsenal, Arsenal the Unworldly. I would rather be able to pitch the Barraging, right? So if you Arsenal the Unworldly, you can then block with Barraging. But if you Arsenal the Barraging and your opponent threatens you enough that you have to block, you have to keep an extra card in hand to pay for the Barraging, to pay for the Unworldly, right? So let's say, you have Unworldly, quite literally any non-block or non-blood debt. We'll call it NBD, non-blood debt, and then 2 random cards plus Barraging Beatdown and Arsenal. If these don't banish, you now have to keep one of these cards to play the Unworldly into the non-blood debt attack. Or you block here, and your turn is Unworldly into Claw just to not die. That doesn't sound all that good. Whereas if you have Barraging in hand, plus the non-blood debt, plus 2 random cards, and you have the Unworldly in Arsenal, you can block with these 2, pitch the Barraging to send the Unworldly into the non-blood debt, right? You get to threaten more damage this way while playing more defensively, where here, if you want to play as defensively, you still have to keep that extra hand. You have to keep 2 cards in hand, right? So you're only able to block with 2, and then you don't actually get to send the extra damage. You get to send like a claw at most, right? So that's sending 3 damage as opposed to sending 8 damage or somewhere along those lines. So certainly angle to have an unworldly and arsenal over barraging and arsenal if you have the choice of the two in a later game scenario. Obviously, if you're not doing as much blocking, who cares? You're going to have your whole hand to play with. Finally, one of the best arsenal targets, it's Endless Maw. You just does such a good job of just straight winning you the value game, and on those turns where you have to block out, so let's say you have an Endless Maw, an arsenal, you have some random blue, and then who cares, right? 3 cards that all block. You block for 9, you pitch the blue, you send Endless Maw. That is 18 value on your turn. Plus you turn off Blood Debt. And that's like the worst case scenario. Arsenaling Endless Maw, like going into a Blood Rush turn, is incredible because you have that Endless Maw safe. You can go Claw, Endless Maw. It's 21 damage off Blood Rush. I mean, even if you lose that Claw, even if you lose the second Claw, it's still 16 damage. I mean, arsenaling Endless Maw, not as good as arsenaling Boneyard Marauder. Boneyard Marauder is definitely the best non go again banisher. Let me scroll back up here. Write that in Boneyard. Best non go again banisher. What is happening? Okay. I would arsenal this over Unworldly. Just because the Unworldly will pitch for this, and it threatens more damage than the Unworldly does. And certainly, if you keep a yellow in your turn is Unworldly into Boneyard, it's fine. But that's definitely something to keep in mind. When it comes to maintaining your arsenal, let's say that instance of we have the Unworldly and the Boneyard. I would actually play the Boneyard, so I would just pitch my card, play the Boneyard, arsenal the Unworldly. The biggest thing, the easiest way for you to die in Levia is to lose that. Is to lose your ability to banish. So, not always, but try to maintain Blood Debt and Arsenal. You can control your arsenal. You can't control the top of your deck. So, if you do your best to keep Blood Debt and Arsenal where possible, obviously going off Arsenal on a Blood Rush turn or a Shadowrun Horror turn, that's fine. Nobody's going to be mad at you for that. But do your best to maintain Blood Debt in Arsenal just so you can keep, or I guess not Blood Debt, but Banishers. Let me rewrite that. Do your best. Try to maintain Banishers. Obviously if you have the choice of arsenaling a Dread Screamer versus a Boneyard, if you're not doing a lot of blocking, arsenal the Dread Screamer. If you're doing a lot of blocking, arsenal the Boneyard. It's if you maintain that Banisher and arsenal, and if you look to maintain that Banisher and arsenal, it's going to go a really long way. And just to kind of hammer home my point, God, was it this game? Is it going to pop up here? Yeah, I think it was the second game where you had that, yeah, here we go. So I'm going to pull up the second game. It's, this game review is in my last video, of Komil versus, Jarl. So we come to this situation where you have the choice of arsenaling either. So here with Coronet Peak, now there's a world where you just discard the beast, so then you don't do that though. You pitch the Graveling Growl, or you just discard the Graveling Growl. Actually, what am I saying? You discard the Graveling Growl, right? Graveling Growl just goes bye-bye. Because you want to maintain that hungering, especially because you have this Call to the Grave, right? With this setup, you know for a fact that your turn one is going to be call for Hal, pitch Beast Within for hungering, Arsenal random card, or IP, right? And on this turn 0, you have, or on this turn 1, you immediately have Howl in your banish. I mean, you cannot ask for a better setup against a Jarl, against a defensive deck. But as you'll see if you watch the game review, Comil opts to discard the Hungering, which does a lot of the same thing, right? It gets that 6, and especially here, seeing the Shadow Realm Horror. So now what ends up happening is this is a cascading major negative effect. Comil sees that play of call for Hal, play the Banisher to get the Hal in banish, Arsenal a random card. But in the world where Comil discards the Graveling over the call, or over the Hungering, Comil gets to arsenal the Shadow Realm Horror instead of arsenaling this Graveling, which ends up, where are we? So Graveling gets arsenaled. So here's, where are we? Turn 3, turn 4, still there. Turn 5, and it's not until turn 5, at the cost of having to keep a weird hand, I believe, that Comil is able to get the Graveling out of their arsenal. As opposed to, if this was a Shadow Realm Horror, they could have threatened a bunch of extra damage with the Shadow Realm Horror. So, that's why, where is it? Where are they? That's why they're traps. Don't arsenal these. Alright, I think I've ranted for long enough. I've rambled for long enough. If you have any questions, as always, feel free to reach out in the League of Levia or Purple Discord. My name is Heretic. And have a happy New Year, happy holiday season, whatever it is you celebrate, if there's still celebrations.